Hello, welcome everybody. We're just going to give everybody a minute to get logged in. And in the meantime, feel free to drop in the chat a little hello. Let us know where you're calling from. And we'll give everybody a second to get settled. Okay. All right. Welcome everybody. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Steph Piano. I lead trade partnerships at By Iris. So, I am that main contact and your link between the travel trade in North America and the phenomenal clients we represent, like the Hawkfield Collection. Today, we are going to be hearing from Hugh Owen. He is the co-founder of the Hawkfield Collection, given a little wave up there. And he's going to be sharing about himself. He's going to be talking about the collection and giving an overview of the 10 DMCs that are part of the collection. So we're going to do that for about 30 minutes, and then we're going to leave time for a live Q&A. You're more than welcome to save up your questions for that Q&A time, or feel free to drop them into the chat. Once I pass it off to Hugh, I'm gonna keep an eye on the chat, so we'll keep that managed. And just so everybody knows, we are recording this webinar, so we'll share this recording afterwards, so you can always go back, or if you have to drop off, then you can sort of go back and check out what you need to. And then we'll also be sharing Hugh's contact information and a little bit of information about the collection and the DMCs as well. So without further ado, I will pass it over to our guest of honor, Hugh Owen.
Well, thanks, Steph. Hi, everyone. I don't think I've ever been the guest of honor for anything anywhere, so I'm really pleased to finally have achieved that. If you just give me a moment, I'm going to put up some slides. So there'll be a bit of technical clicking and tinkering, and then we can begin. Can everybody see the screen, the slides? Yeah.
You're all set now. Yep, perfect.
We're all set. Okay. Hi, everyone. Yeah, Steph mentioned my name's Hugh Owen. I'll talk about myself in a little bit. I'm going to present to you today the Hawkfield Collection and tell you a little bit about all the DMCs that we have. And the point is that these are great DMCs. I'll explain how I located them a bit later on, and I select them for how good they are and their performance. A little bit about me. So I used to work for a company called Audley Travel years ago. Maybe some of you have heard of them. They've got a big office in Boston now. I was actually there when they were quite small. When they were still, 30 people. I think I was employee number 30. And then these days there's about 900 of them. So conclude from that what you will. And then I was also the co-founder of a company called Travel Local. And at Travel Local, I was there for 16 years. I exited last year and decided to set up Hawkfield Partners. And at that business, I worked with, over the years, probably something like 800 DMCs or so around the world. So it was a really good education for 16 years or so in the DMC world. And then I've also worked as a consultant for the United Nations as well, mostly on developing economies. So places like Uganda, Egypt, Turkey, etc., helping small SMEs and DMCs make their way in the travel industry. So you're probably wondering what the hell Hawkfield is, so I'm going to explain it. It's a signal and noise company. So I think that DMC world is noisy. If you're a buyer, you're a travel advisor, you're a tour operator, you're a travel agent, knowing who to buy from as DMCs is really tricky. There's more than 10,000 worldwide, and there's no real way to vet them. There's no standardized way to find somebody reliable that you can trust. I think there are huge variations as well in pricing, speed, quality, etc. And then probably the biggest thing is that when you're busy, as you guys all are, there's a trust gap that opens up, and anything that helps you bridge the gap is a good idea. So that's the noisy bit, and then what I try and bring is the signal. So trying to find DMCs that are friendly to the trade, obviously quality and responsive, etc. And then it's important to me personally is the independent bit. There are some DMCs out there who are quite big and quite corporate, and I always prefer independent businesses, SMEs, wherever I can find them. They tend to have more of a soul and a spirit to them, which I like. So that's where the collection comes in. Why does it matter? So in my own experience over 25 years or so in the travel industry, I think there are three things that you need in combination from a DMC and that the customers need you to find on their behalf. And they're basically quality, variety, so rich breadth and depth of product offering, and then also value, including value for you guys. So you need to be able to make a decent return off the investment of your own time and effort. I think that these things are quite hard to find in balance across the DMC world with more than 10,000 of them around the world. This is why repping companies exist. And it's also why the collection exists as well. We're trying to find the right balance. And I think not all DMCs by any means, but some that are promoted and presenting themselves out into the market, they tend to combine two out of the three, but not all three of them. And so as soon as I realized this a few years ago, I was like, okay, we need to find DMCs that have all three. It doesn't mean 100% on everything. It's just a balance between those three things. So that's what we do. We're trying to find quality, value, and variety all in the same place. These are all the countries that we currently cover. At the moment, there are 10 members of the collection, and you can see them on screen here. We're adding to this all the time, so I get approaches quite frequently. These are all DMCs that I know. Some of them I've known for many years. And we have some other countries that we're hoping to sign up in the next few months as well, in case they're on your mind. So I'm hopeful that we should be able to sign up Greece shortly, and also a company in New Zealand. And there'll be other incremental additions to the collection as we go. Each DMC is exclusive to its destination within the collection. So, for example, Immerse India Tours here, which covers India, Nepal, and Bhutan. It covers those countries exclusively within the collection. We will never have 5 different DMCs for India, Nepal, and Bhutan. We would have one. Oh, aha. Now I can walk you through the collection. So we're going to start east over in Asia. In Indonesia, I don't know if any of you have been to Indonesia before. Um, just if you haven't been, all I would say is that this is probably one of the key opportunities worldwide in any destination is Indonesia because of the breadth and depth and the size of the country. A lot of what gets sold in worldwide, not just North America, but in Europe as well, is just barley. And actually, this country is quite incredibly rich and diverse. Kekayon is an unusual and distinctive company in a region that's not known for its distinctive DMCs. There's a lot of big corporates that flooded into Indonesia about 20 years ago. And Agung, the CEO, he's a kind of homegrown success story for Indonesia. He's really good. He's a strong CEO. He's very flexible, works long hours to make sure that everything works seamlessly. They have very good whole country coverage. So if you have customers that want to go to Raja Ampat, the Coral Sea, Tanjung Puting, etc., these guys can cover all of that really, really well. It's just a country that I'd say is generic historically in the way that the DMCs present. So this is a distinctive and different country, different DMC rather. And then India, Nepal, and Bhutan. So this interesting company called Immerse India Tours, the guy that runs it, he doesn't have a surname. It's the only person I've met in my life who has no surname. He's just called Ujwal. Everyone knows him in the Indian tourism industry. He's really experienced. India is one of those countries where it's not enough to know a company. You need to know an individual and you need to trust them. And Ujwal's the guy. So when you meet him, he's like really calm. You can trust him very easily and quickly. He's got quite an intellectual air about him. Very good on differentiation. He loves differentiation. He wants to help you be distinctive with your customers. So he's a really good guy to have as a sort of co-pilot really in India. And it's a big and complex place. So you need somebody with his kind of calm logistics approach to make it all work seamlessly. He covers Nepal and Bhutan as well. You'll frequently get customers trying to travel to a combination of those countries or even all three sometimes. And he covers them well. So I can recommend these guys. Moving on, we've got over in Europe, Portugal, Azores, and Spain. So Pedro is a really good friend of mine, so I'm really biased, I'm afraid. Um, he's a cool guy. If you meet him, he does come to some North American trade shows. If you do meet him, I think you'll be charmed. He's a really lovely bloke, actually. He has a team over in Porto, in the north of Portugal. I would say these guys epitomize the ideal combination of quality, variety, and value. They get it really, really right. They nail it. He's very well regarded as a CEO. I think he's very believable as a CEO. He looks and sounds like one. Very good at differentiation. He uses a lot of his personal contacts around Portugal to really bring that to life. And I think for those of you who are interested in the particularly ultra luxe segment or quite high end luxury, he has good experience with that as well. He once did a booking for me at Travel Local for somebody who worked in the finance industry in London, like many millions in the bank or something. And he actually traveled with them to the Azores. He used to go on a holiday to the Azores every year as a child. And so he knows it like the back of his hand, every cove, every little cafe, everything. And so they had a really, really amazing time because of his dedication to the cause. And yeah, he's very experienced in North America. He knows the market really, really well. And then France, UK, and Ireland, a company called High Point Holidays. I don't know how many of you have sent customers to France before. France has been historically a bit of a tricky country for DMCs. I wouldn't describe it as being a DMC wonderland particularly. And High Point, as soon as I found them, well, we found them when I was at Travel Local, and as soon as we found them, we were over the moon because suddenly we had a company that we could rely on who were really differentiated. Um, they get amazing reviews, so the customers that travel with them love what they do. The owner is English, but he spent a very long time in France. And so they cover France, UK, and Ireland, that whole region really, really well. He's got good coverage. They've got an Irish, French, and British team that are partly based in the French office, but also partly remote as well. And just fantastic local knowledge. I think, for example, their Ireland expert was a Golden Key concierge at a major hotel in Dublin. And so they know a lot of the kind of hidden spots of a city like Dublin, which is great. So I really rate these guys. If you need to stand out and differentiate, then they're very much worth talking to. Mexico, the near abroad. So I'm sure many of you have sent clients to Mexico before. In my experience, Mexico, I hope this doesn't sound wrong in some way, but historically, Mexico has been one of those countries where the DMCs are usually a lot of older guys in suits that turn up at trade shows. And it was due a bit of a revolution, which I think Rutapia brought with them. They differentiate really well. They are famous all over Latin America for sustainability and social impact. They've won awards for what they do in that area as well. They take it really, really seriously. They like being pioneers. So if you want to differentiate in Mexico, they're really good to talk to. I think it's probably one of those countries where it can be difficult to stand out. And so you need people who know the whole country. It's also huge. I mean, I'm sure all of you know Mexico well, but it's a huge place. So having that differentiation, I think is really important. Turkey, we're zigzagging all over the world here, but hopefully you're all getting some wanderlust, right? Turkey, massively underrated destination if you've never been. It's quite a spectacular country. It's yeah, hard to describe just how varied and rich it is. These guys are also, just like the Portuguese, these guys are a really good combination of quality, value, variety. They capture it really well. Umit's a classic CEO in some ways, but also I think he captures something youthful and energetic and innovative about where Turkey's headed. He's quite a kind of modern CEO, I would say. Also really experienced in North America, worked with us at Travel Local into the North American market. They're really fast. Not all of these DMCs exist in countries that have a reputation of being very fast. So Turkey is not somewhere you would go to for really fast responses, but you will get them from Umit and his team. So can very much recommend Turkey. And if you've never sold a trip there or you're interested to promote it, I'd strongly recommend this country. I think it's underrated internationally. Okay, we're going to get a bit colder. Iceland. Um, so Iceland's a funny one in the trade. Anybody, if you've ever sent any clients to Iceland before, you'll know this, but it's expensive. And so most clients are forced to self-drive whether they want to or not when they visit Iceland. You can do private driving, but that's a very expensive undertaking in Iceland. When you do self-drive, you need really, really detailed information on where to go, how to go, what to see, etc. What you can't do is just, yeah, we've booked your car hire and we've booked your hotels, off you go, have a good time. So these guys specialize in self-drive. They're really, really good at it. As in, they're are probably the best in the country at doing self-drive FIT, basically. And as I say, you have to be seamless. Things can go wrong in Iceland when you're just given a car and some hotels. They're really responsive. Again, this is a country, I would say it's renowned for being slow. So if any of you have sent an Icelandic DMC that you've met or that you found online, if you ever sent them a request, I would be shocked if you got a reply inside of 48 hours. But these guys are usually very fast, which is one of the reasons why they're well regarded. They can cover Greenland and the Faroes as well, in case that's of wider interest. That is not their team, by the way, in the hot tub. That's just some travelers in the hot tub. Okay, we're going to go down back to South America. So this is Responsible Travel South America. They're based in Ecuador, in the capital Quito, and they cover obviously the Galapagos Islands and Chile. In the collection, they cover these three countries, as in this is where they can be exclusive for. But just to be clear, as you can tell by their name, they cover the whole continent. South America is a bit of a curious place. I think it's probably a bit like Europe in this respect, where every now and then you'll get customers that want to go not to Ecuador and the Galapagos, but they want to go to South America. They want to do some big regional trip for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, taking in 5 countries. Who do you turn to for those trips and why? And this company is really good at doing that. So they have operational offices across Ecuador, Galapagos, and Chile, and also Colombia. They've been sending people to Peru for many years. They are just about to open an office in Bolivia. So they've got very good coverage, breadth and depth. The main thing that I love about them, and that any travel advisor or tour operator in the world is going to love about these guys, is that they're ultra fast. I don't know how or why it came about. I wish I knew, but somewhere along the line, they worked out that being really, really fast was their biggest chance in the world. And so they nailed it. They work 7 days a week on a rota, and the sales team can respond with a full costed itinerary inside of about 4 hours from a request if it's within working hours, which is ultra fast for South America. So very much recommend them, especially if you're in a bit of a hurry or you've got multi-country regional trips. And they've started to win awards for sustainability as well. So that's a nice thing, a nice feather in the cap, I think. Okay, we're going to get cold again. Sorry, we're going zigzagging all over the place. Okay, up to the Nordics, Scandinavia. So this company is an interesting one. Just like Iceland, when you're in the Scandinavia, the DMCs are generally quite slow. There are various structural reasons why that is and cultural reasons. It's not because they don't know how to be fast. There are other reasons why. These guys had to work out that challenge and speed up. So that's one of the things that makes them stand out. They're very fast. They differentiate really well. A bit like the Portuguese DMC, these guys also sometimes handle high-end luxury, ultra-high net worth clients as well. They work with a government agency in Norway that does special handling for very, very high-end people. So, I don't know, the Clintons or something, they go to Norway, then it will be this agency. It's part of the Norwegian government, I think. And these guys work with them for those kind of clients. It's a pretty tough region for logistics because it's much, much bigger than it looks and more complex than it seems as well. People sometimes think Scandinavia equals super efficient, super easy, and that's not quite right. But they're well regarded. I would say that they're the most up and coming DMC in Scandinavia. So they're a name on lots of lips at the moment, I would say. And then the last one, most recent addition to the collection, it's a company called Memphis Tours. The Memphis Tours are a bit unusual. Sorry, a bit of traffic noise. So Egypt is one of those countries where buying power is incredibly important. So if you go for too small a DMC, you don't really get buying power. And Memphis Tours is a big business, independent. It's not owned by a big corporate or something. It's still an independent business. It's been around a long time, so 70 years. So they've got tremendous pedigree and trust built into the brand. They handled thousands of clients for me and my business at Travel. They did an incredible job. They, for 2 years in a row, they're basically the best DMC in the world for us. They were very, very good at what they were doing. Huge range and depth. They've got multiple offices across the country. They own 7 Nile boats. Why is that important? It means that they can use their own assets to help you sell, either on the value front or on the quality front, or both combined, if you like. It's very, very useful that they have that. A cruise boat is like a floating hotel. So imagine that they own 7 hotels all over Egypt. It's really handy. They're probably one of the, I mean, I think they are the best known and highest regarded independent DMC in Egypt. They do cover the Holy Land in more peaceful times, and I would say that's one of the most popular trips that in normal times that you would get through the Middle East is actually Egypt and the Holy Land. People want to see the pyramids, and they would love to go to Jerusalem, and they'd love to go and see Petra, and they try and do them all on one trip. And it's obviously a good and profitable and operationally clean trip to run through a company of this kind. So there we go. That's the full collection so far. And as I say, there's hopefully Greece and New Zealand in due course, and probably some others across the year. Just for some clarity, so that everybody understands this, we don't charge. We're not sat in the middle of any transactions. There are no charges at all. You don't pay us anything. We don't charge anything. I basically work within all 10 of these businesses on a kind of part-time basis. So there's no charges that come to you or to the client. What we're trying to do is facilitate direct contact between you and these DMCs. I sometimes think that when you contact a DMC cold, or even if you've been introduced to them, it doesn't always work very well. So facilitated contact is the goal. And then once that's happened, we get out of the way. It's the same for Steph as well. Both Steph and I will get involved in introductions. Once everything's set, we move out of the way. So you can just cleanly just get on with things without worrying about us hanging around. And then in terms of costings and payments, which I'm sure is a question that some of you will have, it depends what you want. They're all pretty flexible. They can all take payments if needed. And then on net costs versus commissions, it completely depends on you. And they're happy to do either. So whatever suits you best. And then just to round off, I guess, so obviously we work with by Iris and the team there, in particular Steph, who represents full-time the collection. And you can contact her there, and then you've got my email underneath. And then also, if you go to the main website, my business is called hawkfieldpartners.com, and then /the-collection, you'll see all of the DMCs set out there in a full array. I need to add Memphis tours because they're so recent. We haven't had a chance to add that web page yet, but we will do shortly. There we go. It's over. Your ordeal is at an end.
Thank you, Hugh. That was great. That was such a great recap of what the collection is all about and what each of the DMCs really stands for. So, for everyone who has joined us, this is open Q&A time. So, feel free to come off mute or come off camera and ask a question, or if you just want to drop a question into the chat, feel free to do so. We'll give everyone some time to
Steph, I can
do that.
see there's a question about Japan in here, which I can answer.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So that's Lisa, I think. Lisa, you're not alone. Japan's a really tough country for DMCs. Everybody wants Japan right now, but the DMC market is not brilliantly set up for it. I think Iris and Steph have a company in their portfolio that can handle it. But I do sympathize. It's not an easy place for anybody in the travel industry right now. See how you get along. But who is it that's in the portfolio, Steph? Is that eAsia that's got an office there?
Yep,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
eAsia.
yeah. Yeah, so I think if I was going to, before I was aware of that, if I was going to recommend an option, I would say it's one of the few countries in the world where I would work with a company that's a bit bigger and probably an international company. That's one of the few places where I would actually recommend it. And so Japan is one of those. So eAsia is a good example of the kind of business that you probably need there right now. Somebody mentioned France. Yeah, I feel your pain. France is really tricky. France is somewhere that they don't do speed, I'm afraid. It's really tricky to get people to reply really, really fast. It doesn't happen, and I would be careful about that. If you find a DMC that replies quickly in France, they're probably not in France at all. So just watch out. But the French DMC that we have, High Point, I wouldn't describe them as lightning fast, but they're pretty good, pretty quick. And they do have very good product and differentiation. They're very well regarded and well reviewed. So happy to make introductions if needed. How do you actually determine which DMCs fit all three categories? Yeah, what's your process of evaluation? Thanks, Kelly. That's a good question. So most of these DMCs I've known for years. So the evaluation process was set by Travel Local, which is the company I founded. So in a sense, I'm kind of reliant on the company I built once and their selection procedures for getting the right companies in place. Um, the vetting procedures are quite extensive at my old company. So we would look at all kinds of stuff, where they're legally represented, where we would look at their accounts sometimes. We would not necessarily try out the products because it was really difficult to do that logistically, but we would ask them a huge amount of questions about it, very extensive onboarding questionnaire. The other thing that bigger buyers do, like tour operators, etc., that we did as well, is you use a tender process. So once every 3 years, you would put them through all of the DMCs, even ones that had worked with you for years, you would put them through an extensive process of questionnaires and documents that they had to upload, etc., to show full transparency. And because of the 3 year cycle, it just gives discipline and transparency between the DMC and the buyer. And so that process, as I say, is largely set up by the company that I founded before. So I was able to just port these DMCs with me, knowing that they would already fit those criteria. And then the one that I didn't work with before, it was new to me, was Immerse India Tours, which is Ujwal. So that was he's actually a very, very experienced group tours operator in India. He's done it for sort of many, many years. I mean, he must be like 30 years now. I knew of him. So I was able to apply the same kind of logic that we did at Travel Local to Ujwal and pretty quickly get to a judgment about whether he was the right fit or not. So the actual process is extensive. Without going into so much detail now, you can be reassured that they haven't been swept up in a net or something. I don't need to do that. I can select them and handpick them, basically. Pat, can you talk more about what you mean by differentiation? Yeah, that's a good question. So the way that you're talking about differentiation is through a client lens. So you're saying if the client's high end or if the client's mid range or if the client's like this. Yeah, that's fine. I think most of these DMCs are really in the 4 to 5 star FIT and small groups market. A handful of them can handle higher than that. So if you have ultra high net worths, in particular Portugal and Norway, they can handle that. There's one or two others that have some experience of it. When I say differentiation, I generally mean the breadth of the product. So, for example, Pedro in Portugal, he wouldn't look at somewhere like northern Portugal and say, "Hey, spend a couple of days in Porto and then go on a River Douro cruise," right? Everybody can do that, and Pedro will do it really, really well. He'll do it with his eyes shut. But actually, what can he do that differentiates you from other options that a client may have? And so the kind of thing that Pedro would do that's differentiated, I know that he knows an olive farmer based in the hills to the east of Porto, and he takes people there during the olive harvest. Nobody knows about it. It's a friend of a friend. It's not some kind of it's not something you can find on Get Your Guide or whatever. No one's ever going to take you there because you booked on an app. It's because he knows the people involved and has a relationship with them. So it's that kind of differentiation which I think really marks out the DMC, but also you guys in front of the clients so that you're able to offer something that the market doesn't really show, basically. Hopefully that answers your question, Pat. Does anybody else have any questions?
One of the questions we got in advance that might be
Mm.
good to chat about while people kind of think or drop other questions is, and we get this a lot, is kind of around, will the DMCs do tours and transfers only? Do they require
Mhm.
hotels as well? What does that sort of look like? And so Hugh, I think you have a really good perspective to share on, what that would look like or what that means when you're sort of putting that together.
Yeah. So there's a commercial logic to it when you're a DMC. So the thing I would say is that there's nothing that rules out doing tours and transfers only. just watch out if the booking becomes too small for the DMC, then realistically, it's hard to get them to just do whatever you want. You know, if it's like $800 for tours and transfers and $10,000 for hotels, it's going to be hard to get the DMCs to necessarily move heaven and earth for you or something. But the other thing I would say, I don't know what it's like to be you guys working on things like Virtuoso or these other kind of networks where you're incentivized heavily to book the hotels. But I wonder whether there's a version of that where you can book it in quite a smart way. So let's say somewhere like Portugal, maybe there's a hotel, an ultra luxury hotel in Lisbon or something, where you get really fantastic benefits for yourselves and for your customers. So you want to be able to book that. But maybe the hotel in Porto is no great shakes, or you're not getting much out of it, neither is the client. I would question whether there's a need to put that through a consortium or through a host agency or however it's done, and just put it through the DMC instead. Why? Because liability and responsibility follow the money. So if you want the DMC to be responsible for accommodation, including any issues that arise with the accommodation, it needs to follow where the money goes. That's the logic of it. If DMCs are not responsible for hotel accommodation, then you essentially take the liability and responsibility on yourselves. And you also split the liability and responsibility within the booking, which is not a risk you don't have to, it's not a risk that you should never take. But I think you should just do it on a case by case basis and carefully, basically. But I would say, I don't want to give a blanket rule, but I would say mostly it's fine. And it probably depends on the size of the booking involved. The kind of thing that these DMCs would refuse is if you said, I booked all the hotels and I need 3 transfers and 1 excursion or something. It's too small for them. So the unit economics don't work as a DMC.
Yeah.
What does that hopefully that answers that question. There was another one which was about liability insurance, wasn't there, Steph? I think.
That was, but
Um,
we've got some questions
okay.
live. So we've got Kira asking about if our DMCs do FIT only, or do any of them offer scheduled join-in group departures?
So Kira, you win the prize for asking me a question to which I do not have the answer. Um, do they offer scheduled joining group departures? So I think Memphis does, but I'd need to check that. I have a feeling that Responsible Travel South America might do as well, but I couldn't say specifically. Most of the focus of what we do is FIT. Um, but if that's important to you and you know which country you'd like to be able to book your clients onto, I can definitely look into that for you. Um, Pat, the only other question is about their pricing. I've had proposal for Croatia DMCs for the same basic itinerary, and one was made way more expensive than the other. Yeah, that's a common problem. Um, there is no good reason why 2 DMCs would be differently priced to such a wide extent on the same itinerary. Um, Typically, there are a few reasons why. Cynicism. So if you've got the wrong DMC, then they'll say, oh, well, we can probably bump the price up to X and then let's see what they think. So you probably get some of that. There's more than 10,000 DMCs around. So there'll be some that are out there to try and get whatever they can or whatever. Then the other reason would be some DMCs have very large overheads. So if they've got loads and loads of offices and loads of people and mouths to feed, then they'll charge more money. But I'm sure you're used to this, Pat, but I think there's a balance to be struck between price and quality. And to some extent, you will get what you pay for. And the question here is ensuring that you get value. In other words, that you're getting the margin or commission that you need, but that the client is also getting an attractive price. And I think as long as those things are in place, then as far as I'm concerned, price probably pushes slightly into the background and it's more about the quality of the provision thereafter. So I hope that kind of answers your question. You're making me think I should find somebody in Croatia for the collection. I do actually know a good Croatian DMC who couldn't join the collection, but who I really like. So if you're interested, Pat, I can. Oh, you have someone. Okay. It's like speed dating. I have someone already. Okay. Well, if they trip over their laces for you, Pat, then let me know and I'll introduce you to this other company I know. Do any of these DMCs you mentioned do villa bookings, particularly for the regions the villas or apartments make sense? Yes, I couldn't say immediately it's these countries and so on, but I know, for example, that High Point can book houses and villas in the south of France. Their selection will be pretty restrictive. So because they're not set up as their core product being villas, they will go for particular sort of choice villas that are in important strategic locations for them. They won't have a portfolio of thousands or something like that. For that sort of thing, you would need a villa specialist. Also, people like High Point, I think probably Pedro as well, they can go through their own domestic villa specialists. So they can subcontract through that. I know this is true for High Point because I booked a villa for me and my family through High Point. Um, and actually, they were very good about it. The area that we wanted to stay was quite remote and unusual, but they knew it, and so they were able to find a subcontractor that had the villa selection. Hopefully that makes sense. What would have a DMC not join your collection? Kelly, did you ask the really hard question before, or was that something? No, I think it was somebody else. What would have a DMC not join your collection? They wouldn't join. Oh, that's a very good question. So there's a company, a really good company I know in Brazil, which is a really tough country for DMCs. They didn't join, and they gave me the best answer that I've ever heard as to why they wouldn't join. They said, "We don't want to grow." So I said, "Okay, fine. Maybe we're not the right partner." Because I do want to work with DMCs that are ambitious, basically, and want to grow. So that's one thing. And then the other answer is if I don't think that they're right. I have strict standards, especially around trust. People are, these are human beings. Like that, people will make mistakes sometimes, or no one's 100% perfect. But I want to be able to trust people and be able to sort of, if I have a challenge of some kind, I can call them 7 days a week and say, "Hey, have you done that thing?" And then like, okay, they're transparent with me and say, "Right, I'll get that. I'll get back to you." That's the kind of relationship I have to have with the DMCs that I select. And if I can't find it, then I won't select them. You mentioned the Croatia DMC that couldn't join. Yes, as they couldn't join, it wasn't so much to do with growth for them. They're just a very small business. So I think probably there was an element of my own pricing structure which didn't suit them at the time. They were probably too small. There's only about four of them, I think, in the business. Just yeah, they're called Croatic. They're very good. Do any of these DMCs that you mentioned do the bookings? Okay, no, we've done that one.
We covered that one. Yeah, and
Um,
anybody has more questions, drop that in. But yeah, Hugh, if you want to cover, there was a question initially about liability and insurance and the
yeah.
DMCs having that.
So liability insurance, I don't comprehensively check that with the collection because I'm not a tour operator or a sort of travel agent. I don't sell anything. And so if I did, because I would be taking on some liability on behalf of the client and passing it down the line to the DMC, I would check that. But I do know that the smallest company in the collection, not in terms of team members, but in terms of booking sizes and so on, is Kekayon in Indonesia, and they have liability insurance. So I would need to check across all 10, but the fact that the smallest company has liability insurance is a good sign. Um, there, it won't surprise you to know this. I wouldn't have thought it does anyway, but there are definitely some countries where it's not actually possible to get liability insurance still, unfortunately. You probably know that, but even very big tour operators that you would have heard of or that you probably worked with or for indeed in the past, they also do work with DMCs sometimes in countries that don't have liability insurance and where it's just simply unavailable. So it's not necessarily a total blocker to use that, but I would understand why you want it. And I hope in the next few years that it will be quite comprehensive and common across the industry.
Hey, any last questions or comments? Give everyone a chance if they have anything that they want to drop in, or like I said, feel free to come off mute and ask.
I mean, just while everyone's thinking about it, um, as I said at the start, I'll be growing the collection out. I have a lot of contacts amongst DMCs, not anymore in the hundreds, but certainly there's quite a lot of countries worldwide where I know good DMCs and I understand them and understand how they work and so on, and how to get the best out of them and vice versa. And so I guess part of me wants to say to you all that the collection is not necessarily the limit of of what we can do here. I'm happy to just be useful. So if you need recommendations or you're stuck somewhere, I can either give you a name or I can give you some perspective. Korea would be good to find a good DMC. Yes. Uh, I know a Korean DMC from years ago. I need to try and recall their name. Um, yeah, I think it's a Ukrainian guy and his Korean wife that own and run it. But they were really good. They were one of the best actually. Let me see what I can find. I hope you mean South Korea. If you mean North Korea, that's I don't think they'd join the collection anytime soon. You do mean North Korea. Oh my God. Yeah, there's only one DMC that's legal and allowed, but I think you knew that. Oh, you don't. Okay. They're called Koryo and they're owned by the North Korean government. They have an office in Beijing, so you have to go and book through there. Um, yeah, so as I was saying, the main thing I would say is that if you get stuck anywhere, I can try and help. It doesn't quite fit with the Buy Iris portfolio. Iris, I've got you down as a North Korean like groupie. Um, I think you'd be perfect. They're going to love you. They're probably listening to this call right now, everybody.
Wow,
Um,
I'm so glad this call is being recorded.
yeah. What could possibly go wrong? What could possibly go wrong? Yeah, yeah, just to reiterate the point, I'm happy to be useful. So if anybody in Iris's network gets stuck, has challenges, I can see what I can find in my extensive Rolodex and see who we can find for you all to work with. Be happy to do that.
Amazing. All right. Any last takers for final questions for Hugh? He loves the hard questions.
Yeah, I do, except not from Kelly or Kira. Yeah, thanks, Kelly. You don't rub it in, yeah?
Well, if there's no last takers for questions, we want to thank everybody for taking the time to jump on the call or listen in and to hear from Hugh and about the Hawkfield collection. And oh yeah, Lisa, do we have a Canadian DMC? Funny, I was just getting this question a lot last week.
Yeah, so there are two that I know of, and I'm trying to remember whether one of them is still trading under the same name. There's one called Tundra Voyage, I think. I think it's based in Montreal, Tundra Voyage. Toundra Voyage. Maybe have a look at them, see what they're like. There's another company whose name I've forgotten. If you're desperate, Lisa, then I will find the name. Entrée Destination. Okay. Okay, Iris, don't be competitive here. This is not the place.
Who can be the most helpful?
Yeah.
That's where we both come together, between Iris and Hugh. Yeah, if there's somebody that we don't rep and we know someone who's amazing or another, agency that has a phenomenal DMC, always happy to share that.
Yeah, and actually, hey, do recommend DMCs into the collection. If there's a country that you can't see in there and you know a good DMC, I'm all ears. I'll check them out.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for joining in. As we mentioned, we've got this recorded, so we'll follow up. We'll share the recording so you can always jump back to it. We will share Hugh's contact information so you can email or call him and give him all the extra hard questions you think of over the next day or so. And we'll share some more information about the collection as well. Yeah, so again, thank you from us at the By Iris team. And Hugh, any final words from you?
Just thank you again. Thanks for everyone for turning up. And yeah, feel free to get in touch. Very happy to help whenever I can.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.